Alex Eala walked off the court at the Lindner Family Tennis Center past midnight on a Monday, having just lost to Amanda Anisimova in 3 sets, and the Filipino contingent in the stands was still on its feet. Not cheering. Not chanting. Just standing there, holding flags, refusing to leave, as if their collective presence could somehow extend what Cincinnati had just witnessed across 4 extraordinary days. The 21-year-old from Quezon City paused near the tunnel, looked up at that pocket of humanity, and placed her hand over her heart. She did not cry. She did not wave. She held still for maybe 3 seconds, and those 3 seconds contained more genuine communication than most athletes manage in an entire press tour. If you are new to this channel, welcome to Tennis Insight Story. Before we go further, a quick favor. About 90% of you watching right now are not subscribed. If you enjoy what we do here, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It helps more than you know. Now, let us talk about what actually happened in Cincinnati, because the headlines barely scratched it. If you really love Alex Eala, then comment now Eala 100%. Here's the thing about this Cincinnati Open that most coverage missed entirely. The tournament itself was almost an afterthought in Eala's summer. She arrived in Mason, Ohio, carrying a 37-19 season record, a brand new WTA 500 title from Washington, where she dismantled Jessica Pegula in the final, a career-high ranking of number 20, and the kind of physical mileage that was beginning to speak through her shoulder. This was her 3rd tournament in 3 weeks. Toronto had already squeezed 7 matches out of her legs before Belinda Bencic finally ended the run in the 4th round. By the time Cincinnati slotted her into the 17th seed and handed her a first-round bye, Eala's body was conducting a quiet negotiation with her ambition that nobody in the press room seemed interested in discussing. But Cincinnati was never really about the tennis results for Eala. It became something else entirely. It became the week where the tennis world had to reckon with a simple, uncomfortable fact. The person generating the most commercial demand, the most ticket sales, and the most emotional investment at one of the sport's premier events was a 21-year-old from a country that had never produced a professional tennis player of any consequence before her. The pre-tournament press conference set the tone. Reporters asked Eala to describe Filipino culture, and she paused, laughed, and said, "Wow, very loaded question." Then she thought about it carefully and offered community, family, hospitality, love, kindness. She said it plainly, without performance, and then immediately added that no culture can be summed up in a couple of words. That kind of self-awareness under the fluorescent glare of a press room is rare in seasoned veterans. In a 21-year-old competing in her first ever Cincinnati Open, it borders on remarkable. They asked her about the Pacquiao comparison. She handled it like someone who had considered the question privately before anyone thought to ask it publicly. "Pacquiao is such a sporting legend for us Filipinos," she said. "It never really crossed my mind when I was watching his fights back home that one day I would be compared to him. Then the pivot that mattered. I think they're both beautiful. They both have their own beautiful set of characteristics." She declined the flattery without rejecting the honor. That is diplomacy learned not in media training but in genuine thought. When they asked what would make a successful Cincinnati, she gave an answer that should be studied by every young athlete with a microphone in their face. "If I lose first round, but it's a really good match. Not to say that it's a successful week, but it wasn't a bad one. And if I reach the final, then I'll take that too." She laughed at the end. The laugh mattered. It communicated that she understood the absurdity of predicting her own narrative while simultaneously refusing to pretend she had no expectations. Then came the match against Elena Gabriela Ruse, and this is where the Cincinnati story took its first genuinely moving turn. Eala had history with Ruse. Back in 2024, Ruse beat her in the 3rd qualifying round of the US Open, denying Eala what would have been her first Grand Slam main draw appearance. 2 years later, the hierarchy had inverted completely. Eala was the seeded player. Ruse was the qualifier fighting for relevance. The Filipino flags were so dense in the stands that the Cincinnati Open social media team later reported it looked like a home match in Manila. Eala won the first set 6-1. She was leading 3-0 in the second when Ruse called for medical attention for an ankle injury. Play was then suspended for lightning. When the all-clear came, Ruse retired. The scoreline read 6-1, 3-0, retirement. A walkover in everything but official designation. And here is the moment that defined Eala Cincinnati, the moment that mattered far more than any winner she struck. During her post-match on-court interview, with the crowd buzzing and the Filipino fans erupting and the cameras rolling, the interviewer naturally steered the conversation toward Eala's dominant performance. Eala answered, yes, she felt the ball well, she was focused, she kept herself in the zone. Standard stuff. Then she stopped the interview's momentum cold. Nobody likes to finish a match with a retirement, she said. First and foremost, I just want to wish Gabriela Ruse a speedy recovery. Injuries aren't fun, so I hope she recovers soon. She said it before she talked about the crowd, before she mentioned the ranking, before she addressed her own Cincinnati debut. The first substantive thing out of her mouth was empathy for the woman she just defeated. And it was not performative. You could tell because it was specific. She did not say, I wish my opponent well. She used Ruse's name. She acknowledged the pain. She made it personal. This is the moment that Rafael Nadal would later reference indirectly, and it connects to a deeper thread running through Eala's 2026 season. Nadal, who had sent Eala a congratulatory message after her Washington title win, wrote on social media, "Congratulations, Alexandra Eala. What an incredible week in Washington. A well-deserved trophy for all the hard work. Congratulations to the Philippines and to the entire Rafa Nadal Academy team." That message carried weight because of its specificity. Nadal did not congratulate a protégé. He congratulated a person by her full name, a country by its flag, and a community by its institutional identity. There is a backstory here worth telling because it reveals something about both Eala and Nadal that stats cannot capture. During her Miami Open run in March 2025, Nadal sent Eala a personal direct message for the first time. Not a public tweet. A private message. Eala did not see it for 4 days. My phone wouldn't stop ringing and I was trying not to check it too much, she later told Tennis Channel. Rafa had sent me a message, but I only saw it 4 days later. I apologized for replying so late, but I thanked him. Think about that exchange. The greatest clay court player in history sends a private message to a 20-year-old from the Philippines who trained at his academy, and she does not see it because she is too busy living the moment he is congratulating her for. And when she finally sees it, she apologizes. The entire dynamic tells you everything about the culture Nadal built in Mallorca and the character Eala brought to it. Greg Rusedski, the former world number 4, put it directly on his podcast during Cincinnati Week. She's not going to make those mistakes because she can balance these things off. She has a love for tennis. She has Rafa as a mentor, and she's got such a good group of people. Rusedski was talking about scheduling, about the risk of overplaying at 21, about the cautionary tales of careers burned too bright too young. But he was also talking about something less quantifiable. The Nadal Academy did not just teach Eala how to hit a forehand inside out. It taught her that the way you carry yourself when things go wrong reveals more than the way you celebrate when things go right. And Cincinnati was a week where things went wrong in a very specific and illuminating way. The Anisimova match. Round of 32. Night session. The kind of scheduling that sounds glamorous until you realize the match did not end until nearly 1 in the morning Eastern Time. Eala won the first set 6-4, and inside that set was a game that will live in Cincinnati lore. The fifth game went to 13 deuces. 20 minutes for a single game. Eala held, and the crowd lost its collective mind, but the cost of that hold was invisible in the moment and devastating in retrospect. She poured so much physical and emotional energy into winning a single service game that her reserves for the remaining 2 sets were fundamentally compromised. Anisimova, for her part, was magnificent in the way that only deeply frustrated people can be. She spent the first set making faces at her player box, rolling her eyes at her own errors, and generally looking like someone who would rather be anywhere else on earth. Brett Haber on Tennis Channel noted that Anisimova led the tour in eye rolls toward her box, and he was probably right. Then, somewhere in the middle of the second set, she drank what appeared to be a Red Bull courtside, and the internet immediately erupted in speculation that it was beer, cider vinegar, or some kind of illicit performance enhancer disguised in a luminous cup. Lindsay Davenport and Haber debated it live on air. Reddit threads multiplied. The consensus eventually settled on Red Bull, and the transformation that followed was so dramatic that the memes practically wrote themselves. Post-Red Bull Anisimova was a different human being. Her forehand, which Eala had been targeting all night and which had been spraying errors in every direction, suddenly found its range. The backhand became a weapon. The double faults continued, 7 for each player across the match, but Anisimova's attitude shifted from visible despair to cold-eyed determination. She broke Eala in the second set to level the match, and from there the third set was a clinical 6-2 dismantling. The tactical story was clear in the numbers. Eala hit 7 forehand winners to Anisimova's 18. She hit 9 backhand winners to Anisimova's 18. Eala won 94 total points to Anisimova's 106. But the real story was in the first serve percentages and the return positions. Eala stationed herself inside the baseline to receive Anisimova's second serve, the same aggressive positioning that had terrorized top 10 opponents all summer, and it did not work. She was mistiming returns, overhitting, sending balls long. The game plan that had dismantled Pegula, Swiatek, Rybakina, and Osaka was, for the first time in months, producing more errors than pressure. And she did not adjust. This is the honest critique, the one her own fans on Reddit articulated with uncomfortable clarity. She plays this way regardless of the opponent, and it has worked for her, especially against top players, one commenter noted. But when it isn't working, she doesn't seem to adjust. The comparison was drawn to Leylah Fernandez, another aggressive returner who, when the timing is off, refuses to take a step back and simply make the ball. It is a young player's flaw. It speaks to conviction more than stubbornness. But it is a flaw nonetheless, and Anisimova exploited it mercilessly once she found her rhythm. After the match, Anisimova's on-court interview produced its own moment of genuine grace. "I know Alex is such a great player and such a fighter," Anisimova said. "I knew it was going to be a really tough match. There was quite a bit of support for me tonight, so I really appreciate that because I know how loved Alex is. And for good reason. But I really appreciated it because I felt like I needed a pick-me-up in this match because it's past my bedtime." That last line got the laugh, but the sentence before it did the work. "I know how loved Alex is. And for good reason." That is a top 10 player publicly acknowledging that her opponent's cultural impact is legitimate, not manufactured, not a media creation, not a curiosity, but real. Coming from someone who had just won the match, it carried an authority that no analyst or commentator could replicate. Eala left Cincinnati with a 4-6, 6-4, 6-2 loss on her record, a shoulder that was screaming for rest, and a decision to make. She withdrew from the tournament's remaining obligations, posted a short video message thanking the fans who had made her debut so special, and turned her attention to the US Open. "I had so much fun out on court," she wrote. "Time to rest and recover." The withdrawal confirmed what Rosetsky had been discussing all week. The schedule was catching up. 3 tournaments in 3 weeks, the emotional expenditure of Washington, the physical toll of Toronto, and the late-night grind of Cincinnati had accumulated into a debt that the shoulder was now collecting on. But the withdrawal was also a statement of maturity. She could have played through it. She could have chased the ranking points that a deeper Cincinnati run would have provided. She chose instead to protect the body for the bigger stage. What Cincinnati revealed about Alex Eala in August 2026 was not captured in the win-loss column. It was captured in the space between the lines. In the way she spoke about Ruse's injury before her own achievement. In the way she handled the Pacquiao question with genuine thought instead of rehearsed deflection. In the way she described momentum as something that exists but doesn't give you any 100% answers. In the way she told the press that if she lost first round but played well, it would not be a bad week. In the way she stood in that tunnel and held her hand over her heart for 3 seconds while the Filipino flags rippled above her. Nadal's influence on Eala has been discussed in tactical terms, in training methodology, in scheduling philosophy. But the deepest influence may be simpler than any of that. Nadal taught by example that the person you are between points matters as much as the person you are during them. That the handshake at the net reveals character that the winner's speech cannot manufacture. That professionalism is not the absence of emotion, but the presence of respect, even when the scoreboard gives you every reason to think only of yourself. Alex Eala's Cincinnati Open lasted 3 matches. She won 1, lost 1, and withdrew from the 3rd she never played. By any conventional metric, it was an unremarkable tournament for a seeded player. By every other metric that actually matters in the long arc of a career, it was the week where the tennis world stopped debating whether she belonged and started watching to see how far this thing could go. The US Open is next. The shoulder will determine the rest. But Cincinnati already said what it needed to say.